It seems contradictory to start a U.S. crochet history project with Irish crochet lace. But in the early 1900s, the United States was a global melting pot of influence. To this day, this particular style of crochet has kept its identifying trademarks and stands out elegantly in a crowd. With Irish immigrants came delicate lacework, gaining fashion-forward popularity. Through the 19th century, Ireland suffered from multiple famines. In order to escape the increasingly worsening situation, many laborers decided to move to America. Over 5 million people came from Ireland to the United States during this time of famine and hunger. To bring financial support, whole families used to pitch in and create desirable lacework for wealthy women's fashion. The distinctive features of this Irish crochet is its separate motifs, joined by intricate filigree mesh or crochet. It reminds me a little bit of organized freeform. I know how that sounds, but with the individual pieces joining aspects to create one beautiful piece of art. Hold on just a moment. I'll be right back to show you what I was able to create. Okay, so what did I make? I found this book on Amazon, Masterpieces of Irish Crochet Lace. I also found a YouTube video, which will be tagged in the description box below. It's Larissa's Lace, and she works from this book to create Irish crochet. Irish crochet is worked of individual motifs, and then they're compiled together. So first the terminology for Irish crochet is a little different than crochet. We have a conversion chart, which helps because a single crochet in the old term is a modern day slip stitch. An old term for a single crochet is called plain, and then we have half double for half double, and a treble for a double crochet, and a double treble for a triple crochet. So that was my key for helping me with the components. In Irish crochet, sometimes you're working over different cords. So I needed to do some research to figure out the chord system. I made myself this little cheat sheet chart. And what this means is DMC thread, embroidery thread, comes in 6 strands of thread wrapped together. If I break those 6 apart, 4 strands of embroidery thread is called a single cord. When I'm crocheting over this cord, there is very minimal oomph or bulkage that's created, as opposed to a triple cord, which the definition of a triple cord is actually 12 strands together, 2 DMC hanks of embroidery thread. And so in order to create these, single 4, 8 double, triple cord was 12. In order to create those, Hobby Lobby has this nice little floss winder, and I was able to take the embroidery hanks and separate them out. So these were my foundation cords that I was working over to create quite a few of these patterns. So after I established my materials, and then I used a 10 crochet thread, number 10 crochet thread, as my working cord. So after I got my materials together, I found a hook to use. This is my polymer clay. This is my 7, which worked very well for nice tight stitches. I went through the book and tried to find the most basic, simple pattern I could find. Some of them are very intricate, incredible. I don't know how families of small and old and everyone else could sit around and do this. It must have been out of necessity, really, truly. So I chose this one. I figured we got 2 border pieces. We have just a few little accent pieces and a very basic background. I felt like I could do it. So these are called plates. And after you create the components, the motifs, if it was done in the appropriate size of the time for the embroidery threads, you could lay it on here and stitch it together. Didn't quite happen, but I overcame. Aren't they beautiful? I overcame. So overcame the obstacle. So here it is in a picture form. That was a diagram form to use as pinning instructions, but this is actually a photograph of the one that I was attempting. Want to see how I did? I did pretty good. I did pretty good. Let's raise you up a little bit. How'd I do? Let's backtrack just a tiny. So when I first started, I just grabbed some embroidery thread. I grabbed some 4-weight yarn. I grabbed some 3-weight, some 5. I was just messing around with these instructions to see what I could come up with. I made 2 of these. They were nothing alike in the size. So I had to backtrack some more. What was going on here? Oh, that's the, let's see, I got little notes in here. Well, let's do, oh, there it is. There's my little motifs and the instructions for my motif. I was working on it. So what I have is one of these. And then I started working it up since I got the stitch, and this was calculating the conversion chart. So then I thought I would try it in the actual weight yarns that it was requiring. And I noticed that every time I started right here in the middle, they were different sizes. It wasn't a magic circle. It was actually a chain around, a single crochet around holding one of these thicknesses, and I couldn't get it uniform until I discovered inside the craft store, they have these little plastic circles. And I figured, okay, that'll help make it uniform. So I started with the little plastic circles and I worked my motifs, my fan motifs, worked them up. Okay, no problem. So then I started working on the border pieces. I did pretty well with the border pieces. I'll include some pictures below. I just did a length, had no idea how much I was working with or how far it would be. Worked on that. This is working over the different thicknesses, the cords. I think the thickest part would have been right in here was a 12. I ended up only using the 12 around the scalloped edge. Yeah, quite a process. I didn't finish. I didn't finish because I didn't really enjoy it. It was tedious, hard work. It was just, I was guessing all over the place, how long to make it, how many to make, how big to make it. And by the time I got to the instructions for this background mesh, I was done. It was working out too long. My pieces don't fit together. I gave it my very best attempt. I might come back to this style much, much later. But as of now, I don't foresee this being something that I use, right? I spend all this time and energy on it. I want to use it for something. I don't think that I would use it for a garment, and it didn't seem worth making it as just a display piece. Moving on. moving on to something more fun. Hold on just a moment and I'll be right back. I'd like to gather some things and tell you about a wonderful, highly influential woman in history, in crochet history. She began her pattern writing in 1920. So we're moving from the 1900s on to the 1920. I'll be right back. I'd love to introduce you to Mary Eliza Fitch. She began her own business as a publisher of needlework patterns. She became known as one of the best needlework designers of her era, creating some of the most elegant patterns of the Gilded Age. Beginning in 1914, her series of instructional books of crochet and tatting patterns were sold through W.T. Woolsworth. Do you remember that store? I sure do. In 1917, she patented a measuring rule and manufactured her own line of crochet hooks, with her initials MEF embossed on their ivory handles. Her pattern collections were lovely, and often the instructions were much easier to follow than most from the era. She designed a large assortment of delicate patterns for fashionable ladies of the Edwardian era, which included sweaters, tea jackets, wrapped scarves, evening bags, bodice appliques, and simple edging for linens, table centerpieces, and runners. Mary was very artistic and expressed her talent not only in her needlework, but she was a fine portrait artist as well. Mary Fitch was also so successful that after her husband's death in 1919, she traveled around the world 3 times and lived in Paris, France for several years. Okay, look what I have. I found this hook on eBay, and it came in this very delicate case. It feels like a plastic. An early plastic created was celluloid. And it has a very fancy like wood grain to it, which I thought was very, very pretty. And inside is lined with this very soft velveteen. And here we have an MEF size 5 crochet hook. And then right here under the 5, it says patent applied for, which from my research tells me that this was actually created, made, printed before she actually, Mary received her patent. This is definitely one of my prized possessions. I don't use it because I've had it in my box to share with you, but I definitely want to start using it. It was meant to use. I'll use it for delicate items. Maybe I can find myself a Mary pattern. There's also a little bit that I would like to share with you from Crochet World. Omnibook. It says right here, here's a crocheted basket. It was stiffened with sugar and starch mixture. Very cool. And here is a little bit that says patterns began to appear in many magazines in the 1920s. Contests became another aspect of crochet scene as well. One popular magazine was The Modern Priscilla, which sometimes carried instructions for 3 separate crochet patterns. Then in the 1920s, there was Priscilla Crochet Contests. 8 cash prizes were awarded to the cleverest crocheters who created the most useful, eye-appealing new patterns. Someone here, another one there, was experimenting with crochet hooks, and out of the air, new patterns were created and still are today. Many more ladies and men were religiously following the stitch-by-stitch patterns with their own choices and color and degrees of tension, and thread and yarn, and all the finished items were so unique from creating from so many different elements. 1920s were fun. I'll be right back. I've created something of my own to show you. Okay, so this part of our journey is taking us to this 1920 published magazine leaflet. It's Lessons in Crochet. If you notice on the corners, there's these filet crochet patterns with little butterfly motifs. As we get into it, cute little kittens across the top. So this Criticelli thread was a very, very dominant thread company in the 1920s. They went out of business in the 1940s, which I found very interesting. I found the location of the factory and found some history on that. I could speak forever on it, but getting right into things, it's interesting that they introduce the book, they talk about their patterns, they even give you directions for washing, which was fun. Pretty much what we do, you know, kneading, not rubbing, using a soak and a delicate soap. Very fascinating. Lots of hats and bonnets of the time period. Thread was very expensive, so they were into making small items so that their outfits could feel refreshed and exciting. If you had a little bit more money, you could afford some silk to make a sweater with a pleated skirt. Very, very pretty. I noticed in this pattern, it calls for when this is knitting needles. Oh, where's my note? On the hat, I marked it because it actually calls for a 1 number 1 bone hook. Thought that was fascinating because at the same time period, we were just coming out with patent ivory handled hooks. Very fascinating. So coming over to here, we have the same filet crochet motif down here in the corner. They were using it on a child's bib, and I thought that if I could duplicate the pattern, which I'll tack some pictures at the end of how I charted out this pattern, I used number 10 crochet thread, and I was actually able to duplicate the filet crochet butterfly as a bit of a page mark, bookmark. I made the pattern once, and then I just did a grid on the back and single crocheted it together, and it fits on the corner of a book. Very, very fun. Let's see, moving on. Oh, this was a fascinating article. Filet crochet, house decor. It says, except the kettle boiling bee, filling the teapot spoils the tea. What does that even mean? I looked it up. It's one of many sayings that instructed people in the best way to make a pot of tea. And afterwards, the tea will not taste very good unless the water in the kettle is absolutely to the boiling point when it's poured over the tea leaves in the teapot, which was the explanation that I could find. But how fun is that? That would be so adorable to invite company over and sit and look what I made. And then I found lots and lots of different edgings, and it was brought to my attention. We have a very patriotic USA, an eagle, American flag, and then the Liberty Bell. Have you ever noticed that our Liberty Bell has a crack in it? I did. I researched it. So the first crack appeared in 1752. It was a small hairline crack, and it broke the integrity of the bell. So actually they went in to fix it. It was made of copper. They went in to fix it and actually made the crack bigger so that it wouldn't keep cracking and breaking itself apart every time that they used it. There's many different opinions on how the first crack got there or whose fault it was in the casting of the copper. Very interesting, but I thought that it was fascinating that in this filet crochet design, they actually designed their Liberty Bell with a crack in it. So accurate. And here we have again some examples of Irish crochet with all the different motifs, similar to the one that I tried making. Here's a pretty little flower over here, a rose and leaf medallion. Again, crocheting was heavily influenced by the Irish. Okay, I'm going to take a little break and I'm going to post some more pictures for you to see. I will be right back with another 1920s make. Hello. Thank you for taking this journey with me. I'm really enjoying the research aspect of this series, Fiber Rewind. What do you think? I made a 1920s flapper hat. Very fashionable. I had a lot of fun researching different styles, different patterns, and I found this crochet hat on Little John Knits, who also has a very fascinating crochet in review of different decades. So it was worked up with a bit of a V-stitch, nice and easy. Increases regularly. We did some third loop to put a little braid across the front. We did some scallops around the side. Her videos are absolutely amazing. Step by step, clear to see, clear to understand. Definitely, I'm a huge admirer. I needed the perfect yarn, and I found this chain spun, blown chain spun. So it's got a little bit of an oomph to it. And I found it on Etsy and purchased, I think it came from Michigan, not Turkey. Well, originally this baby was born in Turkey. But I thought it was absolutely perfect. So it's black and has this filigree looking gold accent to it. Very, very luxurious for the 1920s, don't you think? Women in the 1920s were fun. There was a little bit of a carefree, life is good, we're on top of the world. There was a little bit of a rebel side too to their styles. Of course, they wanted to go out dancing. They wanted to have a good time. There was plenty of money flowing around. People were just enjoying life. Drinking and dancing and socializing. There weren't very many stresses. Wasn't any wars going on in 1920? They were just enjoying life. And one of the very, very fun things that people were doing, they were hand painting on their knees. Hand painting flower motifs. I have some pictures I'll attach at the end. They were painting on their knees as like to draw attention to the risque, fun, playful aspect of the 1920s. And I think it's so incredibly artistic that we've been tattooing ourselves. Yes, they were washable, you know, but it was fun. Not really crochet related, but it transcribes into crochet, fun, you know, make something to just make your everyday outfit just a little bit more exciting. Get all dolled up and glamorous and go have a good evening out. I hope you enjoyed the series. I got a few more pictures to share with you. Yeah, this was the first one. So the last Friday of next month, we'll visit the 1930s, which I don't have as much to share, but I'm a little bit more heavier on the makes, less so on the research. So I hope you enjoy. I'll see you soon. Bye. Thank you for joining me.